I figured it was high time to actually review something a little bit more akin to what people know Armada for. See, Armada was one of those toy lines that live and died by whatever little trick the toys could do. And in the case of toys like this, the hope was that the gimmick and the tricks were so neat that it overcame its shortcomings as an action figure. What do I mean by that? Well, we will have to take a closer look at Armada sideways in order to actually find that out for ourselves. As you can see, this is the classic traitor Decepticon / Unicron agent from Armada, spoiler alert, done up in mostly purple plastic with a lot of yellow paint apps giving him his signature color combination. I will go ahead and mention right now the paint matching is pretty terrible on the purple, but we will let it go for now. As you can see, motorcycle. And this is kind of a big deal because deluxe size motorcycles were kind of a rare thing. They're usually smaller because there's not as much bulk to work with. And I find it interesting in that most motorcycle transformers have one big issue, which is how do you get this thing to stand upright with only 2 wheels? And usually there's a kickstand to fold down or a little support strut, or even like in the case of the movie bikes, big chunks that form weaponry that also like can attach to bases. Here, yeah, the underside's just bulky enough to stand them up. It's about as basic as a solution as I've ever seen, but you know what? It's way better than those flimsy little plastic kickstands, so I will take it. I like the overall form. It's a little bit more modern, factory-made bike. It's not like a big... It's not like a custom chopper or anything, and it's not a crotch rocket either. It's somewhere in the nice, big muscle motorcycle range, which I quite like. You can also see headlights painted in a metallic blue, which is nice, and a windshield up here, which for now is clear. If you know this toy, you know that will change. There's little touches I like as well. You can see little tiny lights, tail lights and such molded into the back. And what I really like is the fact that the missiles that we'll see later have actually been positioned perfectly to be the exhaust. Even with a little bit of red or orangish paint here at the back. Just to give you an example of just how hot the motor's running, I assume. Yeah, it's a pretty nice bike, all things accounted for. Not a whole lot of major detail, you can see, pretty typical stuff for a motorcycle, but nothing, too shocking or noteworthy. What is noteworthy is the thing I haven't even mentioned yet, the fact that he's got a rider. Now, this guy, there's no actual name in the US. The instructions just call him Rider. As you can see, he pegs on with a little crotch peg, which is always... Crotch pegs, rare. But you know what? They are handy when they have them. Anyway, the instructions just call this guy Rider. In Japan, he is known as Mirror. So we're going to call him Mirror, as that's the only name I actually have for this. And the irony about Mirror here, he is combined from 2 different minicons. However, you'll note he actually has way better articulation than most toys from Armada. And we'll give you a closer example of that soon. You can see the head pretty basic in detail, no paint application, so it kind of gets washed out from a distance, but, pretty neutral details going on here. For articulation on this guy, you have fully ball-jointed shoulders, which also hinge at the torso, which means he has a lot more range than he should. 90-degree elbows, and there's a ball joint in those elbows, which means not only can they rotate, it can also bend at that joint as well. So he has a lot of range in the arms. Hips get a little bit stuck going forward, but are otherwise ball jointed and universal. The knee joint is actually doubled because it's a ball joint and a hinge, which also means the legs can rotate as well. Now, most of this is for transformation, but in this mode, it provides quite a bit of articulation for the little guy. As I said, way more than typical Armada toys. And he's not bad in and of himself. Just ignore the massive number of arms sticking off of his back. Only pay attention to these arms. His only arms that matter. Yeah. Anyway, as I said, he is actually comprised of 2 minicons, which we'll go ahead and transform now. Rotating these legs around and flipping this down to create the torso. This is crosswise. As you can see, he is a little bit of a lavender tint to his gray plastic with a few touches of purple here, which just gives him a scant amount of detailing. Now, articulation, he does maintain the knees from the robot mode since he forms the legs, but the arms are now limited to up and down, and that's pretty much all there is for Crosswise. He has no vehicle mode, which if you've never seen the toy before, you'll see why in a second. Now, to transform this, we shove that head back up his butt. We will straighten out these legs, and we can. There's a little bit of range you can move these two since it's all ball jointed. And it's pretty much the same story. The legs have a decent amount of articulation, hinge and ball joints for knees, so they rotate around, and just little swivel ups for the arms. And now, all black with a little bit of red. One thing I will show you, and this is Rook, by the way. One thing I will show you, which, if you notice, Rook's head, who is supposed to be the Autobot in this situation, much meaner head look than Crosswise, who is much more rounded in the eyes and stern, but a little bit more Autobot. It's because an animation error accidentally flipped these guys around. This was supposed to be the Decepticon. This was supposed to be the Autobot, and then the animation screwed up, so they kind of had to flip things around quite a bit. How? You will see why. I'm trying to do this in an order that kind of makes a little bit of logical sense, and it just means that I keep inferring to something that's about to happen. It's like, stay tuned. This review has become very clickbaity, and I apologize for that. Here, we will go ahead and transform him sideways properly. If we can actually unpeg his feet, they're pegged in. Oh man, they're pegged in very tightly, and unfortunately, I just trimmed my nails, so this is a little bit difficult. Once we have those apart, we can slide those in to get his feet in the proper positioning. Legs slide out as such. Now, take this, rotate that section around, rotate and fold out these panels to create sides. It's all, hang on. I got something misaligned here. Hang on. There we go. All comes around and pegs into position. We will rotate the arms around. I apologize if this isn't in camera because this guy's kind of finicky to transform here a little bit. Now we move to the back where we can rotate all of that around to create the backpack. With all that formed, I think we are ready to yank the head out of its hiding spot as such. And there we have, in full robot mode, sideways. And I will adjust it just slightly so you can see his mighty antlers. That is our deluxe, or they called them Supercons back then, but screw it, it's deluxe. Sideways, done up in full robot mode. It's not a bad transformation for a motorcycle transformer. Everything manages to come out nice and bulky, and the proportions are actually not bad at all, considering motorcycles typically have a very scrawny appearance to him. We'll take a close look at the robot head. It's a little bit plain, all things considered. It kind of reminds me of one of those vertical night helmets, little visor sticking through. Again, the yellow and purple as his main color scheme. This head comes up across very neutral, and there's a very good reason for that. As you'll notice, we still don't have a faction for this guy, which is what I've been alluding to this whole time. Now, I guess first off, we will go ahead and go with Rook. We'll flip him over, rotate his arms to the back. Now we'll keep this to something akin to the official transformation for the arm, for the legs here, and we will pull this up to reveal robot mode eyes. Now the trick here is, once we have this guy in robot mode, we can put the head down, put these back, and you'll see a socket there at the top. This is where you can peg these guys in. Now, the arms are specifically shaped, just like the headmasters of olden day. The arms are going to act as pegs that will push down these sliders inside the chest, revealing one of two different options inside that window. If we do this for Rook and plug him in down into the socket. Excuse me, as this is very, very tight to get all the way down. We get an Autobot logo showing through the chest. Now, the interesting thing about this, and you can kind of tell this was probably supposed to be the Decepticon head. It actually looks pretty mean, and that might be the gigantic spiky horns, which have a very, now look, look, his horns are so tall and spiky, I need to adjust the framing again. Look at this, look how freakishly huge the horns are. This was the Autobot. This was bizarre. I don't, for the Autobot head, surely, you rotate them, you rotate things back, even more like a normal Autobot look, something like that. No. For some reason, he was all about really big horns. All three of his heads have these giant antlers going on. But yeah, this looks far more evil. So, I'm not sure why they, they switched because of an animation error. More importantly, it's not the head you remember sideways for. We'll take crosswise for that. Once again, we'll move these around. I will admit, I like how crosswise antlers horns go a little bit better. It's because they're a little bit more subdued. Though, there we go. A little bit tricky because the ball joints in his hips don't really want to cooperate all the time. So, those moved out. We now flip up that piece. You can see it was rounder eyes, more of a, it was actually honestly more of a heroic look to that head. It really is very strange. It really would have worked better the other way around. Now, the same deal. Push this down, and this time we see the Decepticon logo spring forward. And this is probably how you remember him. He spent the most time in animation looking this way. Now, that is the Herald of Unicron we all know and begrudgingly accept. So yeah, it's a neat headmaster trick with a faction switching gimmick built in. And I do like that it's all contained in this central bulk piece of the bike. It doesn't really interfere with all that much. That said, that is a lot of engineering, especially coming with two minicons, so the rest of the toy does rather suffer as far as action figure-wise. You can see he does have universal shoulders, but they are on this weird gearing, which means that position, or that position. And there's no real points in between, which leaves him with these really wide out arms, which I assume I assume he's firing out to people on the side. It just looks like he wants a hug really badly. That's unfortunate. So, good bit of articulation there, except it's so hindered. Rotation at the elbows, but no movement there. The wrists can fold up. For some reason, I suppose that's supposed to be the elbow. At least that's what G1 would have you believe. Of course, nothing in the head rotates. Nothing in the waist rotates. Universal hips, and you can hear the ratchet in them. Unfortunately, there's no semblance of a knee, so this is all fairly useless when it comes to posing. And his ankles, while they do tilt backward, again, there's not a whole lot of posing without knees, so there's really no way you can utilize those. So he ends up being rather brickish. For all that gimmick and engineering, he really doesn't do a whole lot as an action figure itself. Now, if you want a little bit more play function, of course, he does have minicon ports like any good toy does, and of course we do have a spare minicon, so we can plug that in and prime him to fire off those missiles. And of course, we will not be firing off the missiles on camera, because every time you fire off a missile and you're not exactly sure where it's gone, ba with a ba, to bang it bang, diggy diggy diggy, said the boogie, set up, jump the boogie. And we absolutely can't have that. So we won't be firing them. It's just like little it's just pressure-launched missiles anyway. Like, it's a very strange missile type. So, yeah, he doesn't even have spring load. All the springs went into getting that chest gimmick to work correctly. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell. That is Armada Sideways. He's not a bad figure. Like, the charm of having a double headmaster gimmick as well as faction switching does elevate him quite a bit, and the fact that his transformation is pretty clean and precise definitely raises him up a few notches for me. That said, if you're looking for an action figure out of him, he's really just going to stand there looking, I don't know, somewhat tough with his giant reindeer heads, but it's, you know, action figure-wise, he really doesn't have anything going on. It's all about the transformation and the gimmick, and in this case, I think Armada pulled the gimmick off rather well. It's a fairly well-remembered one, and one I don't think we'll see duplicated for quite a while. We're just now getting Headmasters back, and I don't think anyone's going to have the guts to make 2 in 1. Please prove me wrong if I'm wrong, though.